Everybody's fine.
The ancient Egyptians believed sex was sacred. So sacred, they thought the world itself began with a god, pleasuring himself. So this makes us wonder, what were the most bizarre sexual practices of the ancient Egyptians? As it turns out, the story of sex in Egypt starts with one of the strangest creation myths ever told. Mythology, creation, and sexuality. In ancient Egyptian myth, sex was part of how the world began. In one creation story, the god Atum made the first life by pleasuring himself with his hand, since he was alone. His seed created Shu, which is air, and Tefnut, which is moisture. This act was sacred, not shameful, as many would expect. Later, priests even said Atum's hand was like a goddess, balancing male and female forces. Another myth tells of Osiris and Isis, who were siblings and also married. Osiris was killed and chopped into pieces by his brother, Set. Isis put him back together, but his private part was missing. It was eaten by fish. So, she made a fake one using magic and had intercourse with him. And this is how she conceived Horus. Egyptians believed this act helped bring back life, tied to how the Nile flooded each year to fertilize the land. So it was seen as Osiris's life force returning. There's also a strange story where Set tries to dominate Horus by forcing himself upon him. However, Horus catches the seed in his hand, then tricks Set by putting his own seed in Set's food. And when the gods check, they find Horus's seed inside Set, making Set the one who was impregnated. Then, the gods laugh or recoil, and Horus is declared the winner. And although we'll talk more about this later, Egyptians in general saw the receptive role in gay intercourse as shameful, a loss of power. But what did these wild origin stories actually mean for real people? Sacred sexual rituals and fertility rites. Sexual symbolism played a key role in Egyptian religious rituals, especially in festivals honoring the fertility god Min. He was often depicted with an erect phallus, which symbolized male potency and agricultural abundance. His festivals included offerings, songs, and possibly sexual humor, with lettuce as his sacred plant. Lettuce is believed to have aphrodisiac qualities due to its milky sap. A controversial claim from some modern writers suggests that during these rites, the pharaoh may have ritually pleasured himself with his hand, imitating the god Atum to ensure the Nile's annual flood. And while this idea persists in popular imagination, there's no solid evidence in Egyptian records. More likely, it came from misinterpretations of symbolic rituals, such as the king shooting arrows during festivals to represent virility. Egyptians celebrated Hathor, goddess of love and fertility, with a festival of drunkenness involving heavy beer drinking. The event recalled a myth where Hathor was calmed by alcohol and encouraged a carnival-like mood where normal rules relaxed. So, this may have led to flirtation and sexual banter. And during the beautiful festival of the valley in Thebes, processions crossed the Nile for feasts honoring the dead. Participants likely sang, danced, and pursued romantic encounters. Greek sources like Herodotus noted that at Bastet's festival in Bubastis, women made risque jokes and gestures, suggesting that rituals could temporarily reverse social norms. In temple life, however, sexuality appeared more symbolically. The god's wife of Amun performed rituals that imitated divine unions without real intercourse. Dancers and musicians, often scantily dressed, performed during fertility ceremonies, offering sensual beauty to please deities, not for erotic purposes, but as a sacred expression of fertility and joy. And if that sounds intense, wait until you hear what the royal family was doing behind palace walls. Divine incest. One of the most unusual aspects of ancient Egyptian sexuality was royal incest. While incest was taboo in most societies, it was common and deliberate among Egyptian royalty based on religious ideology. Many Egyptian gods married their siblings, like Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, and especially Osiris and Isis. So, this set a divine example. Pharaohs, seen as living gods, copied this by marrying sisters or daughters to keep the bloodline pure and mirror divine order. You can also check out one of our recent episodes on this topic on our channel. But yes, this practice appears across dynasties. Ahmose I married his full sister. Hatshepsut wed her half-brother, Thutmose II. Ramses II married some of his daughters, likely for symbolic reasons. The Ptolemies took it further, with Cleopatra VII famously marrying both her younger brothers. These unions concentrated power, kept succession within the family, and reinforced the royal family's semi-divine status. And to the Egyptians, this wasn't depravity, for it was sacred and strategic. And it preserved royal blood, which ensured loyalty within the palace and avoided outside political threats. Queens often held vital lineage ties, so marrying them into the throne ensured heirs had full royal heritage. On the other hand, incest was not common among ordinary Egyptians. Most people married outside their immediate family, often within their village or extended kin, but rarely siblings or parents. Outside of royalty, incest was unusual and likely frowned upon. One major exception comes from the Roman period, where records from Fayum show a spike in sibling marriages, though some may not have involved true biological siblings. But like we said earlier, in the earlier Pharaonic period, between 3000 and 332 BC, incest was mostly confined to the royal family. But then again, you didn't have to be royal to use sex for power. Sexual magic and medical lore. The ancient Egyptians believed in Heka, magic. Aside from curses and healing, this type of magic shaped love, sex, fertility, and everything in between. Everyone used it. Rich, poor, didn't matter. If you wanted to spark desire, get pregnant or avoid it. There was a spell, a potion, or an amulet for that. One medical text from around 1550 BC, the Ebers Papyrus, lists some unusual cures for impotence. You might rub a paste of baby crocodile heart, wood oil, and honey on your body. Or mix onions and herbs with oil and apply it to your genitals. And your back, oddly enough. They also ate aphrodisiacs like garlic and carob. Prayers to gods like Amun-Min often came with the recipe. And yes, they practiced birth control. Their methods were surprisingly effective, if a little unconventional. Some recipes suggested vaginal inserts made from acacia gum, dates, and honey. Turns out, acacia can act like a natural spermicide. One recipe, though, called for crocodile dung mixed with sour milk or dough. Chemically, it's questionable. Symbolically, it tracks. Crocodiles were tied to Set, the god of chaos. There may have even been condoms made from linen, but we're not sure if they were for pregnancy, disease, or ritual. But the idea was there. For women hoping to conceive, there were potions too. Fenugreek, sycamore juice, and plenty of amulets, especially of Hathor and Taweret. If pregnancy didn't happen, couples might turn to temple priests. They'd try to remove a curse or ask the gods for help. But not everyone wanted a baby. Some spells were meant to drive away the seed or bring on menstruation. Basically, early abortifacients. One potion used pomegranate rind, which contains compounds similar to estrogen. And they even had a kind of pregnancy test where they would urinate on wheat and barley seeds. And if they sprouted, you were pregnant. Modern science actually backs this up. The estrogen in urine does help seeds germinate. Strange, but it works. By the Greco-Roman period, love magic got more detailed and more intense. People cast spells to attract lovers or curse rivals. One 2nd century AD spell had a woman burn fish bones with herbs while calling a spirit to turn a man's heart toward her. Another involved burying a piece of inscribed linen at someone's door to ignite passion. Think of it as ancient love magic with a bit of stalker energy. Then there's the Turin erotic papyrus. Found in Deir el-Medina, it's one of the rare examples of ancient Egyptian erotic art. It shows 12 scenes of men and women having graphic intercourse. The men were balding, overweight, and middle-aged. The women were young, slim, and styled. The difference is obvious. And probably the point. It may have been satire, maybe even a private joke. Other parts of the scroll show animals acting like people, adding to the comedy. Its rare graphic style suggests it was meant for private use, not temple walls. Maybe it was shared among scribes. Maybe it showed up at parties. But it definitely wasn't standard decor. Sexual symbols also showed up in daily life. Bes, the dwarf god, was often nude with exaggerated features. He protected homes, kept away evil, and promoted fertility. Then there was Taweret, the pregnant hippo goddess who guarded childbirth. Phallic amulets, little upright penises, were worn for luck and protection, especially from the New Kingdom through the Coptic period. They weren't seen as dirty or crude. The phallus symbolized life, and life meant power over death, illness, and bad luck. But at the same time, Egyptian society had a strict side, and some punishments were hard to forget. Social norms, adultery, virginity, and homosexuality. Now, although ancient Egypt had a relaxed view of sex, society still drew clear lines around behavior. Adultery, especially by a married woman, was a serious offense with harsh consequences. Marriage was informal, just a mutual agreement, but it came with the expectation of exclusivity. Texts like the Instruction of Ptahhotep warned men to avoid married women. Not for moral reasons, but because getting involved could be dangerous. Stories like the tale of two brothers and legal records from the New Kingdom show adultery could lead to public disgrace, mutilation, or even death. A wife might be killed or have her nose cut off. Her lover might be beaten or castrated. The harem conspiracy against Rameses III led to several executions over sexual betrayal. In cases of adultery, men were judged less harshly. A husband's affairs were tolerated, as long as they didn't involve another man's wife. prostitutes and concubines were common and didn't bring much shame. Still, adultery threatened social order, inheritance rights, and the balance of Mat, which was Egypt's principle of justice and harmony. Even in death, fidelity mattered. In the Book of the Dead, souls had to swear, "I have not committed adultery." Egyptians could divorce and remarry if things didn't work out, and records show this happened often. So, instead of sneaking around, people could end a marriage and start fresh. As for virginity, it wasn't strictly enforced. A good reputation mattered more than purity. Love poems from the New Kingdom suggest premarital intercourse was common, and if pregnancy followed, marriage usually did too. Children born outside of marriage weren't shamed, as long as their father claimed them. And as for homosexuality, it was less clearly defined. There were no laws against it, and religion didn't condemn it. But cultural attitudes were mixed. As mentioned earlier, the myth of Horus and Set frames male submission as humiliating, with Horus earning respect only after proving he hadn't been penetrated. A Middle Kingdom story about King Neferkara visiting his general at night suggests a relationship. But it's told like gossip, known, but maybe not fully accepted. The most well-known possible gay couple from ancient Egypt is Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep, two high-ranking officials who served under Pharaoh Nusser around 2400 BC. They were buried together in a shared tomb at Saqqara, shown embracing and facing nose to nose. Such poses were normally reserved for married couples. This gay couple even combined their names in inscriptions. And although both men had wives and children, their decision to be buried side by side in such an intimate setting suggests a personal bond that went beyond friendship. Some scholars argue they were brothers. But the use of the nose kiss, which was a symbol of sexual love in Egyptian art, suggests otherwise. Again, ancient Egyptian views on homosexuality weren't clearly defined. A line from the Book of the Dead has been translated as, "I have not had intercourse with a man," which may reflect disapproval. Although it could also refer more generally to ritual impurity or sexual abuse. As for lesbianism, it is barely mentioned at all in native sources, and only shows up later in Greek and Talmudic texts, which are neither neutral nor contemporary. Male homosexuality, however, often remained quiet from what we could tell. They may have been tolerated if they didn't disrupt family roles or draw too much attention. In some tombs, men are shown with both wives and male companions, hinting at discreet private arrangements that society was willing to overlook. And in the end, sex wasn't hidden in ancient Egypt, for it was cosmic, ritual, and direct. It created gods, crowned kings, and shaped eternity. What seems strange to us was sacred to them. So, maybe the real question isn't why they believed these things, but why we don't.